Welcome to Fantasy Formula 1 Podcast. I'm Paul. That's Ben. Thank you for joining our conversation. It is a conversation we'd be having anyway. You can feel free to join our conversation at Fantasy Formula 1 Podcast on all the social medias. We're also on the emails at info@fantasyformula1podcast.com. Today, we are going over the fantasy F1 aspect of the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, which is round 2 of the 2024 season.
Yeah.
And previous episode, we talked about the race specifically, and this time we're going to be going over specific fantasy implications.
Sure. And if you just found us, first of all, thanks and welcome. And second of all, so the knowledge base that this podcast spans is master's thesis level of statistical analysis from Paul here to me, who just found out F1 exists a couple weeks ago, and I'm just riding his coattails here and enjoying the ride. That sounded a little romantic. That was
but no, it's true. It's true, and having you on brings a lot of really good conversation, a lot of really good analysis. From even the beginning of, hey, what is DRS?
No, absolutely.
Then we get into like aerodynamics, and then that leads into the different discussions about that, and so it's really good.
And it works out well for me because I know a lot of people say there are no stupid questions. I don't believe that. I believe there are stupid questions, and I am not afraid to ask them on your behalf if you don't know what's going on.
And speaking of questions, I have gotten a couple questions from people about like, well, hey, when you're saying this is the conversation you'd be having anyway,
yeah,
isn't that a little cheesy? I'm like, no, it honestly truly is. Because the origin of this is I was really wanting to do the Fantasy Formula 1 podcast, but it's just me sitting here monologuing about it.
Sure.
And then, Ames and I are over at your house for dinner, and I mentioned it, and you're like, yeah, let's talk about it. I don't know anything about it. Let's do it.
Totally sidelined an entire dinner double date. And so our wives weren't too happy.
Our wives were like, okay.
But I was wide-eyed. I'm like, wait, there's all these variables going on. Wait, there's only, there's 20 cars, but there's only 10 teams. Are they teammates? Do they work well together?
Right.
Sometimes they hate each other.
Sometimes they don't.
And it's great. All of it. There are so many dynamics in this sport, and it blows my mind. And every week that we watch the race, we come back and we do the just from a spectator analysis standpoint to fantasy team build out. There is so much more that I come away with, and it's a blast. This is so much fun.
So much fun. So again, if this is one of your first podcasts, we normally for these episodes, we'll talk about the implications of the race and what the numbers will look like now.
Yep.
Then we'll go through Ben's teams, and we'll talk about
everything I did wrong.
Everything you did wrong, and everything I did wrong too. I made a couple huge, not huge. It was fine judgment at the time, but it just didn't pay out, and that's kind of the point.
Speaking of those mistakes, so let's talk Ferrari.
Yes,
let's see
Ferrari.
Let's get right into it.
Okay, so Ferrari appendicitis with Carlos Sainz. They bring in Bearman, which is what we're calling him.
Oliver Bearman.
Yeah. And I think he's, where's he from? I forget. I have to look him up. But anyway, and he shows up. He comes off the bench. He was racing Formula 2, and if you hear him talk about it, like so on Friday it's free practice 1, free practice 2. Yeah. Saturday,
Sainz is like,
he's like, man, I'm not feeling too hot. Overnight they realize, hey man, you have to have surgery to remove your appendix. I don't know how important an appendix is. I mean, but I hear it's pretty important.
It's good to remove.
It's good to remove. Yeah. And so Oliver Bearman, who's getting ready to race Formula 2 like Saturday morning, they're like, by the way, come dress out for Ferrari, you're in. And he's like, okay.
This kid's 18 years old.
He's 18 years old. He's the youngest driver to ever score points.
Is he really?
He's the youngest driver to ever score points his opening race in F1.
What a cool stat.
It really is. I would get that tattooed on my chest.
Yeah.
And so Oliver Bearman comes in off the bench and does better than Lewis Hamilton. Now, you can argue pitting, you can argue Mercedes versus Ferrari, and there's a lot to talk about there. But the dude does great. And to your point, though, as soon as he's coming in, I'm like, man, I want to stay away from Ferrari.
Absolutely.
Because this guy's going to be back in the pack with Haas and with Alpine because it's a Ferrari. And when you're in for frame of reference, whenever there's a replacement driver comes in, your job is just to have the car go on the track, so that way you're racing, so you get the advertising out there and all this, and to not crash. You don't want to cost your team stuff.
Right.
But Oliver Bearman was like pushing it. The announcers were like, man, this guy's like sticking his nose in places.
He came to race.
He came to race, and he did. And he did wonderful. But then the fantasy implications for that are, I'm really slow to make conclusions and say, you guys need to do this. So first off, you can do whatever you want to with your fantasy Formula One team. Some people like to have just to represent their teams. You really love RB. You really love Austin Martin. So you really want to have them on there. And if they don't win, well, they just don't win.
Well, and again, yeah. So there's a couple ways to do fantasy sports of any kind. One is these are my guys, and one is I want to win.
I want to win, and what do I do to win?
And so
again,
if you want to win, you gotta be willing to let go of those sentiments just a little bit.
And the sentiment that must be let go now is the belief that you can win, you can do well and be in the top tier of this game without having Red Bull Racing and Ferrari as your constructors.
Yep. And and every week we come away with a few key takeaways. One is don't make knee-jerk reactions. Step outside for a little bit, catch your breath. If the week didn't go the way you thought, don't click the button to
which
to
I was this close to going. I need to do this. Like what I'm about to tell you, I'm like, no, we have 2 weeks.
And that's exactly what I did. And we'll get into that in a second. But then the other key takeaway was the success or the death of your team starts with the constructors that you pick this year.
Absolutely, more so than last year, because in 2023, you had Red Bull Racing was the dominant constructor.
And everybody else.
And everybody else was 2 tiers below that, right? So your Ferraris were having DNF issues. Your Ferraris were crashing out. Your Ferraris were having great qualifying times and then just losing their minds, right?
And to be fair, that appears to still be the case as far as Red Bull goes. But the rest of the pack is not so evenly spaced.
Ferrari fixed their problems from last year, at least based on all the numbers. Ferrari fixed their problems. So like last year, if we look back to 2023, it was, and again, I'm not going to go click all the way back there, but they were, I think, Charles Leclerc DNF'd a quarter of the races.
Did he really?
Yeah. It was like 4 or 5 that he DNF'd. And then Charles Leclerc, just car went wrong. They crashed. They did whatever.
Yeah, overall his season looks strong, but I didn't. That's a wild stat.
And the difference between, and that's what we're looking at now. The fact that they're not crashing all the time, that they are actually being competitive. They're going to be head and shoulders above everybody else, up there with Red Bull.
Well, and that speaks to the point too.
It does
that a racer's individual stats and their fantasy value and performance are wildly different.
They really are. And I'm going to harp on that. I'm going to reiterate that real quick. Fantasy. Like real world Formula One does not care about fantasy world Formula One. They can't. They can't. You can't do for that. And so the purpose of fantasy F1 is for fantasy F1 nerds like myself, and I'm getting you into it as well.
I'm on the train.
He's on the train. Okay, so fantasy nerds like Formula One nerds like us to have some stake in, and this is true for all fantasy sports, to have an out for us to use all of our knowledge about whatever sport and compare our knowledge to other people's knowledges and try to be able to say, well, I'm a bigger fan than you are because I'm better. I have my fantasy F1 team. Like last year I was in the top 3%. 2 of my 3 teams were in the top 3% worldwide of fantasy Formula One.
Wow.
And I'm sitting here, I'm like, fantasy Formula One as a game does not matter. I will not, this doesn't matter, but I love it. And evidently I'm good at it. And I really enjoy, what makes me good at it is the fact that I enjoy just focusing on it so much.
And a key element of that is maintaining a comprehensive view. It's not having a favorite because, like you said, last year it was you get Max, you get Red Bull, and then you're in competition with everyone else who made those first 2 smart moves.
Yep.
And so you're looking at your middle tier guys, the guys you can afford with the remainder of your budget, which is not much. So you've got to keep tabs on what's Williams doing, because again, strictly from a season perspective, who cares? They're the guys that the good guys pass.
Yeah.
But no. In fantasy, it matters who's doing well, who's the primary. It matters. It matters what AlphaTauri now RB is doing.
Yeah.
It matters that suddenly McLaren got good.
Yes.
Halfway through the season, like what the heck,
And what matters this year is that William,
the battle for 4th place matters.
Really matters. And Logan Sargent, his values increased 20% in 2 races.
Yeah,
he's actually
he's finishing races.
He's finishing races now.
And again, we talked about this last episode. Man, just the immediate value of even the barest experience as a driver. You're going to get. You're either going to realize, you know what, this is not my career path, or you're going to get leaps and bounds better.
Yep.
Because this is such a small group of skilled drivers that you're either improving or you're done.
Yeah.
And so to go from crashing and DNFing for various reasons to actually gaining positions, even if that means P16, P14, that's an improvement.
Exactly.
That means he deserves to be there.
And from the fantasy standpoint, as long as he's getting 5 or 6 points a race and not going negative 20,
sure.
Now we want him on our team. Now he's a solid driver to have on your team.
Right, because he is that $5 or $6 million driver that you inevitably end up with after you've spent big.
Yep.
That as long as he's getting you in the positive, that last spot is a value, not a liability.
Absolutely. So the big takeaways from this last 2 races, and I'm very slow to say this is what you need to do to be good at F1. I'm very slow to do it because there's so many variables. As soon as Max Verstappen sucks in a paper bag into the intake of his car, torches his engine, and now he's on the side of the road smoking. Well, that's going to change all the numbers, but we have to be careful not to be like, well, that means he's a magnet for plastic bags. Like, that's not a thing. If anybody didn't watch Saudi Arabia, there was an issue with debris on the track earlier.
And what was that term?
FOD, foreign object damage.
That's right.
For all you naval aviation, I assume all aviation, but FOD is defined as any loose object that can cause damage to personnel or equipment.
It's always fascinating when worlds collide, like two completely
oh my God. Right? So you must have. So here is a big takeaway from this weekend. You must have Red Bull Racing and Ferrari as your 2 constructors to win Fantasy Formula 1 in 2024.
And you know what? Look over the last half year, and this really highlights the difference in value between a driver and a constructor.
Because there's also a lot of bonus points for being a constructor. So as soon as you get your both drivers to Q2, then that's like a bonus of like being 3 or 6 or whatever. You get them to both drivers going to Q3, then now it's like a 10-point bonus.
Right.
So not only if you're Red Bull, do you have both of your drivers in Q3, now you get an extra 10 points for your team, assuming that happens all 24 races. That's 240 points just sitting on the floor that AlphaTauri isn't going to get because they don't get both of their drivers in Q3.
Right. So so this is where it's really interesting as well is Carlos Sainz he's a rock star.
He is.
The guy can drive. Ferrari lost him for the week.
Yeah.
Put in an 18-year-old kid, not even their reserve driver.
Yeah.
And he still scored points.
He still scored higher, or he still scored higher in the finish than Lewis Hamilton.
So kind of hot take / maybe knee-jerk reaction here is the state of the vehicle can matter more than the state of the driver.
Absolutely.
I think. So,
I think you're absolutely right, and especially since there's 2 so dominant constructors this year. So here are the numbers. Red Bull Racing, after 2 races, their total points without DRS or without whatever, that's for drivers, but you get my point. They have 179 points after 2 races. Ferrari has 131. Mercedes has 78. McLaren has 77. Aston Martin has 29. Red Bull Racing has 11. So,
RB.
Sorry, RB.
Not Red Bull.
Not Red Bull Racing. Red Bull Racing has the big number. They have 179.
Red Bull Junior.
Red Bull Junior, baby Red Bull, has 11. So,
Red Calf.
So, right now, for just constructors, I have 179 plus 11.
Mm-hmm.
If I'd gotten Ferrari, I'd have 179 plus 131.
And that's the logic mistake I made this week. On one of my teams, I had Ferrari as a constructor.
Yep.
I didn't have Carlos, but I saw him drop, and my logic went, okay, even if Charles Leclerc does great, you got a no-name guy coming in. He's going to be more of a liability than anything else. I expected a DNF. I expected a P13, a P14, something.
And that would be hailed as a success for him if he had gotten P15.
Right. And so I'm thinking, you've got a tight pack at the front. So who knows how Charles? Charles. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not.
We can use the Americanized
Leclerc.
version. Charles Leclerc. Yeah. Charles Leclerc. There we go. There's the American version.
No, the American version is Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc. Yeah.
Charlie Leclerc.
I feel like I should be back in Indiana right now going, hey, did you hear about that Charlie Leclerc? He's a great driver.
It's French for the clerk. But
what's that initial joke? It was like,
it was early 90s SNL.
Yeah, SNL.
El Nino.
El Nino.
Spanish for the Nino. But even if he did well, in my mind, I'm going, his other driver is going to just jack up the Ferrari points, and I was wrong because I was thinking, okay, Mercedes is the third place team right now. You know, in the hierarchy, you've got Red Bull untouchable, Ferrari and Mercedes. You know, Mercedes has platform issues, but you know they're consistently that third place team. So I dropped Ferrari as a constructor and went with Mercedes, thinking, who knows what's going to happen with driver 2.
Yeah.
Turns out it didn't really matter all that much because let's look at point totals. This is a rookie move on the podcasting standpoint. But let's look at dang it, I lost it. Anyway, there was still about a 30-point difference where Ferrari as a constructor outscored Mercedes because Mercedes has car problems. Yeah. So even though you've got Russell and Hamilton, driving their hearts out, when you get on a straightaway, they're getting overtaken.
Okay, and Ferrari had 58 points in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Mercedes had 36.
Yeah.
Then that's how many points the constructors brought in. Like. Yeah,
so
it matters. So Mercedes is tied for third with McLaren, and McLaren is $3 million more expensive than Mercedes.
Yep.
So McLaren, they're doing fine. They're a top constructor.
Yeah. But again, if we go theoretical, if Perez had appendicitis, if it suddenly started being a thing that went around F1 drivers, keep Red Bull.
Keep Red Bull.
They're going to find another driver in the best car. In the best car that's available.
Here is my big recommended fantasy build change. So that you have to have Red Bull and Ferrari as we've driven home.
Yep.
And everybody's going to say, well, wait a minute. Well, Red Bull Racing right now, I missed the start. Red Bull Racing's at 28.2 million. Ferrari's at 19.9. I'm no math magician, but that's like $50.1 million. So that's half of your budget on those two constructors. Why? But what about Max Verstappen? Because now you can't have Max Verstappen, both of them, and whatever. Well, Here's the thing. Once you get both of those constructors, then you will every week have more points than the rest of the field combined times 2.
Yep.
Okay? You just will. And why am I saying that? Well, let me go back to my page here. Why am I saying that? Well, because over the last 2 weeks combined total, Red Bull has 79, Red Bull has 179, Ferrari has 131. That's 210 points by quick math. Is that about right? Then Mercedes has 78, McLaren has 77, so that's about 150.
Yep.
100, a little over 150. Again, rough math. Then Aston Martin and Haas both have 29 and 28, so it's called 30. So there we go. Okay. So they have as many points between those two as number 1 and 2 have more points, number 3, 4, 5, and 6 combined. And then you have Williams with 18, Red Bull as 11, Kick Sauber as 6, and Alpine as -1. So the lion's share of the points, 2/3 of the points, call it, are in the top 2 constructors. You can't not have them and be in the top tier of fantasy F1.
Yep.
So what happens at that point? I've driven that point home. So what happens at that point? Now you only have less than 50 million for all your other drivers. You have to have Max Verstappen because he has 81. Sergio Perez has 62. Charles Leclerc has 39 or has 59. Logic from last year, the lessons of the previous war were you have to have Max Verstappen, otherwise you're not competitive. Well, now they've priced him out. Now that his value is increased by 50% from what it started for last year. Last year he started at 20 million, ended at 30.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So everybody had him and just wrote it up. This year he started at 30. So all his value, points per million, was cut in half. So now, and it's forcing us to have this conversation now. So Max Verstappen after 2 races has 81, which means if he's your DRS driver and you put your 2x multiplier on him like we all get every week.
Yep.
8 and 8, 16, 162 points is what you would have for Max Verstappen over 2 races. If you do Charles Leclerc, who has 59, and you DRS him, then call it 6 and 6 is 12 minus 2. That's 118 points over 2 races, right? I just doubled 59 and double 81. So you're still missing 50 points off of that, right? Over 2 races?
Sure.
Is that about right? No. So how about this? I did the math the wrong way. 81 minus 59 is 12, unless I'm missing my math. 59, 69, I'm 22.
You're 20. Yeah, there you go.
22. Okay. So it changes the numbers a little bit, but it's still not too bad. I might have misspoke last podcast, and if so, I apologize. So that's 22 points over delta between the 2 drivers.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. That tracks.
If you double it up, then that's 44 points. That if you have Max Verstappen, you'll have 44 points, more points with Max Verstappen in the DRS than you will with Charles Leclerc in the DRS. There is more than a 44-point difference from Ferrari to RB.
Is there really?
Well, yeah. No, sorry. RB has 11.
Oh, I got
Ferrari
you.
has 131. Okay.
Yeah.
So as soon as you step up, if you have Mercedes and Red Bull, and you're able to have Max Verstappen on your team, well, then you might not want to get rid of him yet because there's still a 50-point difference between Ferrari and Leclerc.
Sure.
But the thing is as soon as you have, for total overall points that you can get, the best way to get the max points is have two strong constructors, then go to your next best driver available.
Absolutely.
And double their points.
Yep.
Because right now with Red Bull, we're getting all the points from both Red Bull drivers. With Ferrari, we're getting all the points from the Ferrari drivers. And then when you go to the drivers, you can double up one driver. So with the... Is this making sense? Because I feel like
it absolutely is.
Okay.
And when we get to my teams, I think we'll be able to illustrate that a little bit. Because one of my teams, I went. Remember the Stathams?
Yeah.
I went driver heavy first, and then whatever else I could afford for constructors. And after week 1, we adjusted that, and so what was my weakest team became one of my higher scores because we got Ferrari on there, and I didn't touch them.
Gotcha.
And that made all the difference.
Gotcha. So for me and my strong team, I had Red Bull as a constructor.
Okay.
Red Bull Racing, and then Baby RB.
Yeah.
And then I had Max Verstappen. The thought being that Red Bull, Baby Red Bull, they used to be Alpine, would do better.
No, nope.
They're not.
They used to be AlphaTauri.
They used to be AlphaTauri. They're not.
Sure.
So you have to get rid of, with Red Bull Racing and with Ferrari, you can get Leclerc, give him your 2x DRS, or Sergio Perez, 2 DRX him. But Sergio Perez has only 3 points more than Charles Leclerc over 2 races.
You were talking about the value difference,
and the value difference, and the value difference there is call it $2 million, like 1 point.
So how much is Perez?
Perez is 2.1 million.
Okay, and
Leclerc is 20.4, so it's 1.7 million different.
Gotcha.
For 3 points.
Yeah,
and that 3 million is the difference between now that once you do get Leclerc, and once you do need to, once you get Ferrari, Red Bull Racing, and Leclerc. Which, because if Carlos Sainz was in it, you'd want Sainz because he has more points.
Sure.
But now he doesn't because he was out for the race. If you do have those drivers, then like that 3 million is the difference between where's value is the difference between Lance Stroll and Oliver Behrman. That 3 million is the difference between Fernando Alonso and George Russell.
Oof.
That 3 million is the difference between Fernando Alonso and Charles Leclerc. So if you do all this and you save that 3 million,
yep,
and you're like, man, the best I can do is Oscar Piastri. No, with that extra 3 million, you can get Sergio Perez.
Yep, and just off the side there, we didn't get to talk about a lot of the middle of the pack teams during the race analysis, but Piastri, man, someone to watch.
Someone to watch. He absolutely is, and I'm going to go ahead and throw him in right now. Logan Sargent.
Yeah.
If you listen to me all before, I'm like, hey, he's my countryman. I root for him. I want him to do well. Keep him off your team. Sure. I said it on this podcast a few episodes ago. I said, keep him off your team. I was wrong. Switch it. Because now he has 2 races where he stayed in the points for both of them.
Yep.
Right now, Logan Sargent, let me click on him.
I mean, he should be he
has 10 points.
He should be your 5th pick.
He should be your 5th pick.
But he's a good 5th pick right now.
But he's right. He's your bottom guy. Like, he's a guy who will sit there and he will give you points based on the 2 data points we have. He's not being stupid. He trained a lot in the offseason. He says he's bulked up a lot, and you can even tell just when you listen to him, watch him do interviews. He's just got a calm. He's chipping at other drivers. He's stepped up to it, and for fantasy purposes,
he's showing he belongs.
Absolutely, and his price has jumped up like over close to $1 million so far. He started out like at 4.5, and now he's at 5.9. So, or however that worked out.
Yeah.
So the big recommendation, you can get Charles Leclerc, you can get Sergio Perez, or pretty much same. I would say go for Charles Leclerc just because you miss out on 3 points, 6 points if you DRS him, but you save $3 million.
Yep.
If you're at the point where you have your other team, your other players picked, and you have excess money, then try and bump him up to Perez. I think that's fine.
Sure.
And this is saying that, yes, in a dream thing, go Perez, go Red Bull Racing, Ferrari, and Perez. If you're not being able to get the good people in,
Red Bull,
then
Ferrari,
you go Leclerc and use that extra money.
Yep.
Now, real quick, before we get into all your stuff, your team, I want to go through the line real quick and I should have written this down. I'm going to write it down here. Oh.
You're still on camera.
Am I still okay? Okay. For anybody who's just listening, I just clobbered our camera setup with my notepad. Okay. So, actually, I'll just refer to it later. I'm not going to worry about trying to write it down right now. Buy, sell, hold.
Okay.
Want to play that game real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
And yeah, tell me. And again, don't hold back. Tell me why I'm wrong if I'm
And
wrong.
okay. So Max Verstappen. Do you want to say? Do you want to guess at what I'm going to say? Is that fun, or want me to just tell you?
Let me guess first.
Okay, yeah, this will be fun.
It's Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen.
If you've got him, keep him. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Look at that.
There's
Look
that
at part one. All right.
And here's the reason why is because if right now, how about this? If you can have
because
Red Bull
because
Racing,
you can't get Ferrari if you got Max.
Can't get Ferrari if you have Max. There's not enough money in it.
Okay.
Because then for anybody for the public math side, Red Bull Racing is 28.2, Ferrari is 19.9.
So the big change
That's
for
51 million.
from 23 to 24 is it's not Red Bull and everyone else. It's Red Bull, Ferrari,
everybody else.
Okay.
And then so as soon as you have those guys those two constructors are 50.1 million.
Yeah.
Max Verstappen is now 30.4.
Got it.
So there's 70 million, 0.5, and there's not enough money in the budget to be able to field your team.
I'm with you.
Get rid of Max Verstappen, take that extra 10.
Okay. So as we play this game, we're starting
Yeah.
with drivers. Are we presuming
Are we
presuming the constructors
we're
already?
presuming constructors.
Okay.
Because again I'll say it one more time. If you love your constructors, you really want to have whoever on your team, go for it.
So
as of right now, if you want to be competitive, you have to have the top two constructors. There's such a huge point delta.
yeah. Okay. So as of based on the mentality that we want to attain, Red Bull and Ferrari can't keep Max.
Can't keep Max.
Okay.
Based on that, you can't keep Max. And so based on that, who do you get instead?
Got it.
Well, you do not get number 2 in value is Lando Norris. You do not get Lando Norris because he only has 24 points all season.
Right.
And he is more expensive than Sergio Perez, who has 62 points. And he's more expensive than Charles Leclerc, who has 59 points.
Interesting.
Yeah. So can McLaren pull out of their spin that they're in? Absolutely. They're not in a spin. How about this? View last year as an evolutionary jump for McLaren it used to be the top 3 were Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. Now there's a top 4.
Sure.
That's all it is. And so am I saying anything negative about Lando Norris? Nope. Could Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri suddenly pull P2 and P3? Absolutely. And if that happens, you might want to look into, getting them on your team. Based on the last 2 data points for this season, the way I see it going, at least for the next 5 races, you have to get rid of Max Verstappen, and you have to get the people with the next better points because you need that 2x DRS driver. Max Verstappen, offload, Lando Norris.
Keep if you got him. Because like we just talked about. I'm sorry. You just said Norris.
I said Norris.
I'm sorry.
Norris.
Mentally, I was jumping to Perez.
Oh,
sorry,
gotcha.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, for Lando Norris, nope, sell.
Gotcha.
He's not worth that $23 million. You're paying $23 million. It's almost a quarter of your overall budget.
Yep.
For 24 points.
And again, that could have been we were talking about last week.
Yeah.
The recency bias of the end of last season. Jacked up his value.
It is, and
or his jacked up his price.
Yep. And as soon as if in the next race, him and Oscar Piastri come in P2, P3.
Yeah, go Piastri.
Then we're looking at Piastri because now he's up there, right?
What's Piastri's cost right now?
So Piastri's like 19.
Okay.
He's like 19.4.
Okay.
So other than Norris, Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. I'm gonna lump them both together.
I mean, if you need one of them,
you need one of them. Get one of them and have them be your 2x driver.
Yep.
So whether you have Sergio Perez or and if things were equal, I would want Sergio Perez just because he's driving a Red Bull.
Sure.
Right, and he's always coming in number 2, so there will be more points on the bone.
Yep.
For him. However, he's he's like 1.7 million more than the other guy. So when you go with Charles Leclerc, and if once you pick out the rest of your team and you're really happy with it, if you have more than 1.7 million left over in the bank, get rid of Charles Leclerc and put on Sergio Perez. So both of those are the hold. Both of those are the hold if you got him. Then Lewis Hamilton. No, he's like Lewis Hamilton has 18 points. Oscar Piastri.
I mean, and so 19.5 million for 18 points.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton right now. And again, nothing against the guy.
Nothing against the guy.
But the car you're driving, man.
And the simple truth is that right now, as soon as you have 50.1 million for the 2 constructors and Charles Leclerc's 20.4, now you're at 56, 71 million. You have 4 drivers you have to get in $29 million.
Yeah.
And 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 7 is 28. That means if you average it out, you can't spend more than $7 million per driver.
Yep.
And that's going to kind of box you in. So I know we were going for the hold keep, but I guess since we are assuming the two constructors,
it's not as simple as
it's
that.
It's not as simple as that. So if you can get Fernando Alonso, so George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, stay away from the Mercedes.
Did we skip over Carlos Sainz?
Oh, we did.
Because, I mean,
so Carlos Sainz isn't listed right now.
No, but I mean he's 18.8 million at 36 points on the season so far.
So Carlos Sainz, where is Oliver Behrman? I'm gonna see if he's actually listed. He's not. Carlos Sainz, if you can keep him, I'd take him over Leclerc.
I mean, because then you look, there's a couple clumped together here. Because you've got Norris, who's 23 million. He's only gotten you 24 points.
Yeah.
You've got George Russell, who's 19.2 million. He's only at 35 points. So again, relative to those two guys, Carlos Sainz is actually a deal.
He is.
And then Piastri's at 19. Wow, Piastri jumped above Sainz already. He's at 19.4 million for 33 points.
See, are you seeing Carlos Sainz on this list?
I am. If you are looking at the F1 app, if you go under fantasy, there's a tab that says statistics.
Oh, I was looking at the actual for the team.
Oh,
he's not showing
gotcha,
up there.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
gotcha. Yeah, that's okay. That's cool.
So you got a list here. You got total fantasy points scored, and then you can look at averages as well.
And I would like to point out that F1, maybe F1 listens to the podcast because they fixed their algorithm from last year.
Oh, did they? So
Yeah,
we're talking about the Danny Rick value?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So for Carlos Sainz, his value isn't divided by 2 races, it's divided by 1. So they're actually keeping track of how many races. Last year, for anybody who didn't listen to the other podcasts, last year they messed up in the Formula One messed up their algorithm, and they applied the same algorithm to all the people.
Yep.
So if I only raced 1 race and you raced 22, they divided my points by 22 races, just like your points by 22 races, to figure out your average,
regardless of actual races.
And they goofed that up, and that had big implications because it had Daniel Ricciardo was a bad driver when he was actually second best points per million just over his 7 races.
Yeah.
And things like that. And Yuki Tsunoda was, I mean, he was fine, but he had 0.88. And so, but this year they corrected that. I checked it right away after the second race.
Yeah.
And they're keeping Carlos Sainz at 36 points per race because he's only raced 1 race and he got 36 points.
Now, far be it for me to make assumptions, Paul, but I think we can absolutely state unequivocally that it was because of this podcast.
It absolutely was.
So
It
FIA, you're welcome. We're here for you.
We're here for anything else. Well, I'll let you know if we come up with anything else, or you can just hire me. I'd be happy to be to run statistics for your fantasy Formula One. But so we talked about Sergio Perez, talked about Leclerc, the Oscar Piastri. Yeah, as soon as they start to make that jump, as soon as McLaren starts to make that jump, you can look at him.
Yeah.
Right now, he's getting you 33 points for 19 million. The only reason, if you can get the rest of your team, you can get Lando Norris, if you can get Oscar Piastri on your team, do it. I don't think you'll be able to do it and still have Charles Leclerc.
No.
And right now, if you have Oscar Piastri as your DRS driver, if you can get him instead of Charles Leclerc and use that extra 1 million to get you a whole lot of points, then do it. But right now, there's only 1 million difference between Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc, and there's like 25 points difference between them.
Here's what I want to know. If anyone's listening to this and made the switch after Sainz got carted off with appendicitis and adjusted their team to pay $15 million for Behrman. I mean, again, $15 million, 26 points. Awesome.
Right out of the chute.
Awesome.
One race.
But again, who made that move?
I didn't.
Because at that point, I would imagine you've already made your two trades.
Yeah.
And geez. Good for him. And if you had that kind of foresight, good for you too, because that's incredible.
If he had been like 10 million, 9 million, I probably would have gambled it.
Sure,
and adjusted it.
But at 15,
I was like, man, there's no way. Now I really wish I had. I guess he was 14 million at the time because he went up by 1 million. But still, I wish I had. But
sure, because I mean, he's not racing next week, is he?
And it hasn't been announced yet. So from what I've talked to everybody, here's a little bit of current news.
I still have my appendix. I don't know how long the recovery time is.
I've talked to one of my friends. She is a executive officer on a U.S. warship.
Okay.
And we played. She's in my friends league. She's in our friends league.
Oh,
She's
cool.
in there, yeah. And she said that from what she knows about getting appendix out, it's a 6-week recovery.
Oh, shoot.
So most likely he won't be in for this next race because it's 2 weeks between, all that goes. But it also depends. I mean, speaking of the next guy, Lance Stroll, he raced last year with broken hand.
I was about to mention
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Yeah, like he was mountain biking.
Yeah.
Broke both of his wrists and his and some like toes on his foot, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it was all messed up, and he was racing.
I mean, That's pretty awesome.
Right. So I mean, so he could be back in. I like to think internal surgery is something that because
it's taken a little bit seriously.
Yeah, it's taken a little bit seriously. So
maybe don't rush back to signs.
Yeah. So I don't think, and also Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz were pretty close, but yeah, go and Charles.
Are
Leclerc.
they?
Well, and I'd have to look at the numbers. So I don't have it right in front of me. But Charles Leclerc went up 1 million from last week.
Okay.
So let's say Sainz is going to.
Oh, I thought you were talking about his teammates.
Oh no, they don't. They're pretty. If anybody who doesn't watch Formula One, but for some reason you play this game, every race those guys are
end up racing each other. Yeah,
end up racing each other mercilessly despite team orders. After the first race, the reason why I did not give Ferrari a strong, you need to get Ferrari on your team. At one point during Bahrain, they were in a turn.
Yeah,
with front wheels and back wheels interlocked.
That's right.
So if any one point, so while they're going 200 miles an hour, 150 miles an hour, if anybody had backed off or gone ahead at all, they would have touched tires, both would have been out.
Yeah.
For anybody who's trying to picture this, imagine driving down the highway at 200 or 150 miles an hour with your arm inside the car next to you.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
And as soon as they accelerate or decelerate or anything goes wrong, you lose your arm. That's the sort of situation they were in. It was only for a second, but I was like, man, these guys are going to put each other into the wall. And that still might happen. I'm not saying it's not, but the fact that for 2 races, Ferrari's this strong, even if Ferrari gets a double DNF in one race,
yeah.
Well, that means for that one race, they get negative 40. Well, you could subtract 40 points from their score right now, and they'd still be above. That's like third place.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, because if you look at the total constructors right now for the total points, let me go to value. Oh, sorry, let's go to season points. Ferrari right now has 131. Mercedes has 138. So if in the next season, if the next step, Ferrari goes negative 40 for some reason, right? But they won't. They'll have gotten good points with whatever. But let's say they go negative 40. Mercedes got 36. And now, granted, maybe they would have moved up, and it's not exactly accurate. But let's say Mercedes gets 42 points like they did in Bahrain.
Yeah.
And McLaren gets negative 40. Well, then you have 131, negative 40. That's 98 or 91. And Mercedes with 40, that's like at 109.
Gotcha.
So it's still pretty close. It's a little bit of me being cheeky, but still, it won't be a clean cut negative 40, positive 40. But you can right now, Ferrari could crash out both cars one race, and it would still probably might knock them down to third, but it would still be probably a second place in the construction.
It'd still be enough to give me some doubts about them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Be on the vice for that. Yeah. Because like Red Bull had that earlier on, like 2020, I think. Both Red Bulls crashed each other. Yeah. I think it was back when Daniel Ricciardo.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that was the 18 season.
Yeah, at 18, and I was like, man, it was 18. Oh yeah, I was like, man, these guys, what are they doing? Anyway, sorry. This is one of the reasons why we do this podcast, because we will sit here and talk about it ad nauseum.
Oh sure.
So, we talked about the drivers. Yeah.
Okay. So count on Behrman being in for maybe 2 to 3 more weeks.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Okay.
It's 2 weeks until the next race. Probably the next race you'll still be.
And be a lot less scared than maybe you were in the coming weeks, because the kid can drive.
Right.
All right. So, we talked Norris already. We lumped him in with a couple of others.
Lumped him in with a couple of others.
Fernando Alonso, 16.2 million, 23 points.
If you can get him, cool. The problem is that 16.2 million is a lot if you need to be able to, if you want to keep the Leclerc, the setup that we're talking about.
Yeah, given that Leclerc and Perez are 20 and 22 million.
Yeah, you only have 30 million to play with.
16 million's a lot.
It's a lot of it.
Yeah, at this point, you're probably looking at second or third in your or maybe third and fourth in your lineup, and that's a lot of money.
So who are the people to go to? Let's just go ahead and skip to that.
There we go.
Esteban Ocon, 8 million. He went up $500,000 after last race. He drives an Alpine. All right, I do not have faith in Alpine. They've had so many problems.
His was the one that did not.
His was the Alpine that actually started the race. The other guy didn't. Well, he did by definition, but he didn't complete a lap. So I say stay away from Alpine until they unscrew themselves. Mm-hmm. Once they're at the top of the bottom 10, then we can go and start looking into Alpine. Red Bull, baby Red Bull, RB.
Yep.
And this is a time I get to eat crow. They are not doing well.
Daniel Ricciardo, man, 5
points. Yuki Tsunoda, -2 points. All right. Now, Yuki Tsunoda will break your heart. I had a really love-hate relationship with him in 2023, but over the course of all the races, he had 0.8 points per million, 0.88, which is strong. But as soon as he only costs 6, then you're getting very few points per race, and it's not enough to really be competitive.
And that's the thing. You look at them to get. So if you went full RB,
yeah,
you never go full RB.
Never go full RB.
that's $16 million of your budget.
Yep.
Go, look up the list a little bit. Logan Sargent, $5.9 million.
Yep.
10 points.
10 points. And again, remember, this is for fantasy. This is what it's about. You need the points.
Right.
So what do? You get Logan Sargent, and you get Kevin Magnussen,
which is going to be my hopeful
14 points.
14 points.
Yeah, not Nico Hulkenberg.
Because don't be scared that he's Haas.
Don't be scared that he's Haas, which is something that we all have to get out of our system.
Yeah.
Because for all of fantasy Formula One history, Haas has been the joke. Haas has been the one you don't want to get Haas. Like when I started, I was like, I want a Haas because they nothing but upwards mobility.
Right.
No, you're not going to get upwardly mobile with Haas, but you might this year. So the team that I'm working on putting together, I'm not going to click save, but I'm divesting of Baby RB. I'm going to get Kevin Magnussen. I'm going to get Logan Sargent. You're not going to go for Valtteri Bottas because he has -1 points. Nico Hulkenberg has 6. His value went up $500,000. Another way to look at it is to get drivers whose value is increasing, because then you'll continually get more money. Right now, RB is going down. Yuki Tsunoda is worth $0.2 million less than he was last week.
And that's exactly it. I have Yuki on a couple teams.
Yep.
I'm dropping him.
So we're going to look at Nico Hulkenberg has 6 points over 2 races. His value went up 0.5, which means as soon as you wait a couple more races, his value, you can sell him for more.
Yep.
You get Kevin Magnussen, whose value has gone up 0.5 last week as well. So let me go ahead and there's Kevin Magnussen, there's Nico. And then who else value is on the rise? Alex Albon with Williams.
Yeah.
But he's $7 million. So how much millions do you have? So if
he's definitely under that.
He's definitely under that.
Under the 1.0 for points per million.
But then you have, like right now with my build out, right now my primary team, I have Charles Leclerc. I have both of the standard constructors, Red Bull and Ferrari. I have Charles Leclerc as my 2X driver. Then I have both Haas drivers because their value is going up and they're getting points.
Yeah.
Logan Sargent, his value is going up. He's getting points. And that leaves me with $12.2 million left. Well, I could go for Alex Albon, who's $8.8 million. But he's driving a Alpine, and I'm very nervous about that. So you know what?
No.
Sorry.
Albon is Williams.
Sorry, I misspoke. Esteban Ocon.
Gotcha. Okay.
Esteban Ocon's $8.8 million with 15 points. His value went up $500,000 from last race. I'm going to stay away from him, even though it's more points, because he's driving an Alpine.
Gotcha.
And they're having a lot of issues. You can make the exact opposite decision of that, and that's fine. But I am scared right now. I'm enough to admit it, vulnerable, scared that Alpine is.
Paul, I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
That was a big moment.
And it takes a lot. But with Alpine, they're qualifying at the bottom. The only reason he has any points is because people DNF, and he finishes in the middle of the bottom 10. He's not competitive. He's just the war of attrition. He wins.
Yeah.
So I would not go near Esteban Ocon. And I know if you love Alpine, that's fine. Go with him. He hasn't disappointed me yet. His teammate is really disappointing because of just the car performance, not his ability, but also the car's not there. So you stay away from him. Stay away from Pierre Gasly. Please don't do that. Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo, they're all divesting. Alex Albon is the next. He only has 6 points.
Do you give Daniel Ricciardo one more chance, or do you at this point he's had 2 weeks and
this
he's
is
done
very
nothing?
important.
Okay,
I do not give Daniel Ricciardo another chance, and here's the reason why. For a couple of reasons. First off, there is not enough time has gone by for them to get upgrades to their cars.
Okay.
In the previous episode, we talked about it. From the time you race the track, you say, okay, X, Y, Z is wrong with the car.
Sure.
Give it to the engineers. They have to figure it out. They have to come up with a part. Give it to the designers. They have to come up with a part. They have to test it in the computers. Okay, it'll work. They have to go fabricate it. They have to build it. They have to put it on the car and do some testing and see and make sure it works.
It's going to be a minute.
It's going to be about 7 races.
So it's like we talked about before. Wait till you see good things happening.
Yeah, or even listen to the buzz. And as soon as you start, if you're wanting to follow the news about it, wait until like, oh my gosh, new upgrades. And then you look at that. And this is the reason you want to look at you want to watch the free practices or tune in to the free practice results. Because I promise you, as soon as using RB as a thing.
Sure.
So free practice 1, it doesn't matter who comes in first or who comes in last, right?
Right.
It really doesn't. For the free practices, Daniel Ricciardo was first in in the second race here. Max Verstappen was first. Daniel Ricciardo was 12th in free practice in Saudi for free practice 1. Daniel Ricciardo was 19th, free practice 2 in Saudi. And Daniel Ricciardo was 16th in free practice 3. As soon as a low team, like you might have Ferraris and you might have your Red Bulls kind of hide their ability a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Not push it. But these bottom tier teams, you want to put good times on for your morale, but also for your advertising and stuff like that. As soon as in free practice 3, which is which is the race simulation time, as soon as you have Daniel Ricciardo in the top 5 in free practice 3, then yeah, go ahead and change him. Get him back on your team. Get him back on your team before the race, before qualifying. Then do it.
Yeah.
But right now, if you look at all the trends,
and again, though that also does harken back to what does practice mean?
what does practice mean?
Nothing.
As soon as Max Verstappen comes in 5th in free practice, don't read anything into it.
Exactly.
As soon as you have a bottom tier team,
And especially if you're watching it live and you're listening to the color commentary, they're like,
gosh.
"Oh man, Verstappen's at 13th," and
oh my gosh, could we? And I love it. And don't get me wrong, I love watching the F1 commentary. I really genuinely
they're
do.
absolutely doing their job.
What do you think? Do you think Oscar Piastri has a chance at a podium? Well, I think he really does. No, unless Sergio Perez crashes,
Right.
he won't get a podium. Unless Charles Leclerc and whoever is driving for Ferrari with him decide to go wheel to wheel and put themselves in a wall.
Right.
Oscar Piastri, could he? Yes, and I could be wrong, and that could be wonderful. I really doubt it, and you don't want to bet. I would rather bet my fantasy Formula One success that Charles Leclerc will maintain his position as number 3 driver rather than saying Oscar Piastri is going to jump 2.
Gotcha.
So that is when I would begin to get Red Bull, baby Red Bull, back into the fold.
Okay.
As soon as they either do well in a race on merit, they do well in a race, or in their FP3s, they're in a top 10, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, they did an upgrade, or they did all this. All right, then they changed it. Now it's for real. But short of that, then you have to look at the numbers, and that's about it.
Okay. Cool.
So I'm going to go ahead and add Alex Albon onto it. But now here's an interesting thing, at least with me. So I have both Williams drivers and both Haas drivers.
Interesting.
All of them are in the positive points. All of them, their value is increasing. I have 4.9 million left over. So you come up to Leclerc, you drop Leclerc, you get Sergio Perez. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, I'm with you. Absolutely.
So now,
now it's worth paying for those extra 3 points.
Now it's worth paying for those extra 3 points, because otherwise you're just going to be leaving it on the sidelines. Because as soon as you didn't have it, 3 points up from Nico Hülkenberg is a bunch of drivers who I don't want, right?
Yep.
And this is my working with this. So if Nico Hülkenberg is 6.7 million, so add that plus that was at 4 million. Well, that puts you right up in and around the 10 million mark, which is Lance Stroll, who's at -9 for the season. And then Oliver Behrman is 15 million, and that's too much.
Yep.
Below Lance Stroll is Esteban Ocon, who we talked about. Alpine, we're staying away from them right now until they get better, until they fix their car problems. And then you're back into Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly.
Right.
So the next one down there is Alex Albon. So now that I have Sergio Perez and Ferrari and Red Bull, I'm still at a surplus of 3.2 million.
I gotcha.
But now, and here's what I'm going to do is one last little thing, and then we can talk about yours and actually do, because this is just me explaining.
Oh, no, this is great.
In order to make, and this is my conundrum, in order to make this change right now, I'm going to go ahead and take a
how many points, how much is this going to hurt you?
And that's what we're going to get into in a hot second. So we're going to go do a quick little fun thing. Do you have can you whip out your calculator real quick?
You got it.
Okay. So Sergio Perez, 62 times 2.
Okay.
Then sorry, I have to go down here. Okay. Then plus 6.
Plus 6.
Plus 14.
Plus 14.
Plus 6.
Plus 6.
Plus 10.
Okay, we're at 160.
Plus 179.
Okay.
Plus 131.
Okay, so we're at 470.
Okay, so now, before we go away from that, 470. Going to leagues, We're going to go to the public. We're going to go to the starter leagues. We're going to look at the global league. We're going to see who's in charge. 470. The leading person is
you're saying the top fantasy score in the world right now.
For all races is 633, but they use limitless chips. Everybody who's in the lead right now is using limitless chips.
Gotcha.
And what the limitless chip is you can get all the drivers. So they have all the Red Bull, they have all the Ferrari.
Right.
And that's the reason they're jumping up. As soon
So don't freak out if you're saying this. Like, what did I do wrong? You did nothing wrong.
You did nothing wrong.
They are just using all their superpowers.
They're using the superpowers early on, which is what they want. So in the top, let me go all the way down. So now what did you say? What was that number?
470.
470. So, and this will take a second for me to drive this point home, but I want to kind of make sure I'm right. Okay. So 470. We're going to scroll all the way down. In the top 50, the top one, 493.
Mm-hmm.
493rd is a billion-way tie with 562 points. So about 100 off from that. And that's as far down as I can look on just the leaderboards, but they're still using their limitless chip.
Gotcha.
So this means without using your limitless chip, you would be highly competitive. Let me real quick, then. That would work.
So
does this make sense?
It does. You're doing all the math right now.
Okay.
But just to recap, that 470 points is what you would get if you had this team. Spell out the team real quick for me.
Okay. So this team that we have is Red Bull Racing and Ferrari as your constructors.
Yes.
Sergio Perez as your 2X DRS driver.
Correct.
Both Williams, Alex Albon, Logan Sargent. Both Haas, Nico Hulkenberg, Kevin Magnussen. If you had picked them at the very beginning,
and that all fits with your 100 million.
Fits within the 100 million. I actually have 3.2 million left over, and this is after their values have increased from last week. This exact build, $3.5 million. This build is more expensive than it was last week, and would have been even cheaper,
but still attainable.
This build right now, you might have to see a couple negative points. For 2S, or you can use your wild card and switch it all around, is very attainable for everybody. Even if you've if you've picked poorly the first few races, this is very attainable.
So even with the penalties, which who knows how much they'll be based on how much you have to alter your existing. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be different for everyone because some of these people probably have a few of these racers already.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe take.
So let me try.
So maybe take up to 60. Let's call it 80 points of penalties.
Yep. If I take this, I'm going to incur 20 points of penalty.
Okay. So if you took, let's just say, if you took 60 points of penalties, what is your overall score will still be 410
points.
Holy crap.
Yes. Which
should be good enough for your local league.
Yeah. That would absolutely.
And that's gonna put you pretty darn high in the international ranking.
So for me, exactly. So for my private leagues, our let me see, classic private, yeah. So in our international, me with my friends everywhere else, you are actually leading our league with 389 points.
That's a little upsetting. Is that combined through week 1 and week 2?
That's week 1 and week 2. And do you want to know why you are?
Sure.
Because you have Aston Martin. Aston Martin has their first week they had 20 points.
Yeah.
The second week they had 9. So that's 29 points over 2 races.
Yes. That's
Who do I have?
Oh, you got RB.
I had RB. So my third team, my whatever, I'm just going to mess around with the team who has Mercedes and Red Bull, they're second. This is my ultra important team that I really care about, has Red Bull Racing and RB.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I'm so heavy about this.
Gotcha.
Is that me, the guy who literally prides myself on my ability to know how to play this game, RB, they had the one bad race. I'm like, we'll give them one more chance. They did. And even just that, Aston Martin, who had somebody get a DNF last week.
Still
5 times the points that Red Bull had.
Yeah.
So that baby RB had. And you are in the lead by a factor of, so my 60 points. So I'm 20. I'm 29. My primary team is 29 points behind yours.
I don't like to use the word genius, but I will. I didn't ask for this.
Didn't ask for this. It's just a gift, right?
It's
the burden is yours. It's actually more of a burden than a gift that you have this.
And that's why I'm on this podcast, because with great power comes great responsibility. And
one fantasy player to rule them all, and on the track bind them.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah,
I was in the dumps this weekend, man, because I made some dumb moves. Should we go into those moves?
Let's go into those moves.
Okay, so my rookie teams here. Just to recap, Team 1 is Newbie Alpha, which I went based on. I don't want to choose Max Verstappen because I was being, a little impetuous. So I have Charles Leclerc, Zhou Yu, Daniel Ricciardo, Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, and then my constructors are Red Bull Racing and Mercedes. Mercedes was a switch I made at the last minute after I found out that Carlos Sainz was appendicitising, and that was a huge mistake on my part because that dropped me about 20 points. So my team, as listed, got me 185 points. Part of the problem was I'd already made my 2 switches during the week.
Oh yeah,
and then I when I downgraded to Mercedes as a constructor, I saved some money and I upgraded one of my racers to Esteban Ocon, which actually helped me out a little bit.
He got 8 points.
I don't remember who I dropped in order to get him, but Charles Leclerc got me 74 points because it's 37 times because I used my DRS on him. Zhou Yu got me -2 points. Daniel Ricciardo got me nothing. Esteban got me 8. Yuki got me -1. And then I had Red Bull 90 and Mercedes 36. So that wasn't great.
That was not. But again, and that just shows that, remember, we talked about it in the last podcast, Zhou Yu, he spun out in free practice, didn't make qualifying. Otherwise, he would have done better. So if you're like Zhou Yu, I would say do not hold that crash against him.
Right.
Like that was not yes, it was an error. He spun out fine.
Sure.
But his team did a great job putting him back together. He literally was doing his outlap and did not cross the start finish line in time. He was like 30 seconds. He was a minute away from being able to qualify and be great.
Yeah. So Team 2 was named Red Bull Dragon Fruit because this was my Red Bull everything team as much as I could. I had made a few changes from week 1 to week 2 and upgraded to some better constructors. So constructors are Red Bull Racing and Aston Martin. Got me a total of 99 points from them.
Yeah.
I've got Max Verstappen, so 72 points because I used the DRS on him. I got Albon, got me 6 points. Daniel Ricciardo again got me nothing. I picked the right Haas driver. I got Kevin Magnussen, got me 7 points. And then I got Valtteri Bottas for Kick Sauber. He dropped me a point. So total was 183.
And just to belabor for anybody who's listening to this and still like, man, no, I'm not going to get rid of Max Verstappen. Not going to get rid of Max Verstappen. How many points did you get with Max Verstappen there with DRS?
72.
How many points did you get with Charles Leclerc on Newbie Alpha?
Newbie Alpha, 74. Oh, look at that.
Charles Leclerc got you more points than Max Verstappen did last week.
Correct.
Why? Because Charles Leclerc didn't qualify as well. He had to pass more people. Or however it worked. Max Verstappen passed 1 or 2 people just because of pits. Because he pitted and Lando Norris passed him, and he had to pass Lando Norris again. But beyond that, Max Verstappen just gets clean air and no one passes him. He doesn't overtake, and he doesn't pass, and he doesn't get passed. So you're going to get your points with him, but it's staying stationary. As soon as Charles Leclerc comes out midfield, passes everybody, and finishes second, you actually get more points.
That's a great point.
Boom.
Then I have Team 3, which was a driver-heavy team, and with constructors as an afterthought, which we learned after week 1 was a huge mistake. And live on our last episode, we went through some changes, and we got me some better constructors, which kept this team from being completely god-awful. It was still pretty bad, though. Total points is 157. My constructors were Ferrari and RB. And again, the point spread between those two, it's 58 for Ferrari and 4 for RB. If you're getting 4 for your constructor, you're doing it wrong.
That is not good.
No. And so that 157 total points was with also having Max Verstappen on my team. So my drivers for this team were Max Verstappen, 72 points because I doubled him up. Lando Norris, 8 points. He's expensive for 8 points.
He is.
Kevin Magnussen got 7.
7.
Yeah. Oh, and I misspoke. Last week, Nico Hulkenberg actually did better than Magnussen. Magnussen got 7. Nico is on this team. He got me 9 points. And I have Logan Sargent on this team, 7 points.
I will eat my hat about Logan Sargent. He's doing great.
Logan Sargent got more points than the constructor.
He
RB.
did. Ooh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, that's scary.
There's your scary. There is why you wait until RB pulls it up.
There is what you call a come to Jesus moment.
Yes, that's a good. Yes,
yeah,
yes. And of the 157 points, again, more public math, but 150, 100 and what, 30 of those 150 were from Max Verstappen and Ferrari.
Yeah.
So
everyone else is
the other 50 million you spent.
Because then I've got
Bottas
on this team as well, and Bottas.
Yep.
I'm going to call him.
So you spent 50 of the,
and he dropped me a point.
He dropped you a point. So you spent two chunks of 50 million. 150 million got you all your points. The other 50 million cost you your points.
Yeah. So if I had kept, on my first team, if I had kept Ferrari, I would have been over 200 points on that team. But I didn't. And so we have one other friend of the show. His name's Kevin. He's going to be on here at some point. But he went ahead, did similar to you. He took a additional transfer points or deducted from overall score. So yeah, he did another transfer, but he has Max Verstappen, Ferrari, and Aston Martin. But he got dinged with Stroll and Gasly just like I did. So because he and I both backed Lance Stroll and Pierre Gasly, that was a negative 37 points. Gotcha.
And so Gasly, I think we have that coming. Stay away from Alpine. Lance Stroll, again, the only thing about Lance Stroll is that he doesn't make enough points to recover from the DNFs.
Yep.
So I lump him as an overpriced everybody else.
Yeah. So looking collectively at my three teams, my big priorities are going to be try to get Ferrari back if I can.
Yep. And you can still. They're not too, but you need to get them back soon.
Yeah.
Because they're going to keep going up in value. If you try and get Ferrari back in 5 weeks, you'll be paying $5 or $6 more million.
So if Ferrari's not one of my constructors, I'm going to get them back. I'm going to dump Daniel Ricciardo. He's on 2 of my 3 teams, and he's gotten me almost nothing. I'm going to dump Yuki, and I'm probably going to dump Lando Norris to free up some cash.
I think you should, just because the numbers aren't there yet. And as soon as they start now, and something we should talk about is what this means, because we're not there yet, but for sprint weekends, because
that's right,
because McLaren is really good at sprints, and that is Oscar Piastri had his podium or his win or whatever on it, however he got it on a sprint.
Gotcha.
So that's something to consider.
And to that point, that's another area where Mercedes is going to hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, one question. So we've referenced the upgrades that are coming. Is there at this week you can start introducing upgrades?
I don't know. That's a good question. To best of my knowledge, it is based on whenever you realize you need to upgrade something,
you can,
and then you go through the processes to make it.
I didn't know if it was like week 7 people can start upgrading.
I don't think so. I think you, by definition, because it's when you realize there's a problem. Like I said, it takes time to fix it. Realize what you need to fix, then get the trigger pulled on making it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the issue. There's a cost cap to deal with, and there might be something there where it's like, hey, you have to wait until whatever. I've never heard it. It's not in standard conversation, but it could be one of those rules that's written down, and I'm just unaware.
Because that would be an interesting thing if you're going to roll the dice on, like, you know what? Because when we look again at how many more times am I going to say again? Once more with feeling. When we see McLaren and just the jump that they made, I didn't know if it was everyone had the potential to make a splash, but it just happened to be them. I didn't know if there was a specific timeline associated with that, and if not, that's fine. But if so, it would be interesting to look into.
Yeah. I know McLaren's jump came at the midseason break. There's like a month and a half they have off, and I think that is where their jump came. But yeah, that'd be something I can make a note about, and we can maybe talk about in the future.
Okay, cool.
Is all that, because that'd be good. That'd be good to know, because if there's set times, then we can go on cycles and know, okay, this team is good, this team is bad. At the end of the cycle, do we want to get back onto baby RB so we can try and ride them up, because their value is going down and down and down, and as soon as we can get them for $2 million, as soon as we get Daniel Ricciardo for $5 million and they do an upgrade in the car, well, then that might be worth the gamble of getting him back on your team.
Yeah. Okay. Well, key takeaways here this week is get your constructors right.
Yes.
Watch out for the bear man. Don't sleep on Logan Sargent, our countryman.
Yes.
And have I hope everyone just has a good time.
Yeah,
out there.
this is so well, and that's a very valid point. Like, this is a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to when it gets to the point where, like, okay, we know who are the goods, we know who are the bads, and we have the teams, and then it comes down to what they would call, like, playing Age of Empires 2 is micro, right?
Yeah.
You're okay. Now, do we have Logan Sargent? Or do we have Kevin Magnuson?
Sure.
Oh, you didn't have Kevin Magnuson before. You're going to be in trouble. Stuff like that. I'm really looking forward.
Absolutely. Oh, and I'm sorry. The other big takeaway is keep Red Bull, drop Max.
Yes,
because you need the money.
Red Bull, drop Max. You need the money for sure, and get that Ferrari.
That's I didn't. Coming into this episode, I did not expect to have that conversation.
No, and when I was after last race and I did the points, 2 races in a row, the most scoring points you could have had on any team involved Red Bull and Ferrari being your constructors. And then as soon as you're there, it's not Max Verstappen. You can lose a little bit of points to get more points later.
Yeah.
So
well, until next week, this is gospel until next week.
Until next week. And then we will reinvestigate our own religion.
Absolutely right.
We'll climb back up the mountain for new commandments.
So, yep.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.
Take care.